What is it that's here just naturally, effortlessly for us? Is it joy? Is it openness? Is it welcoming? Is it connectedness? How is beingness? How is beingness here for each of us?
Had important meetings with his boss and how can you not cancel them? Yeah, exactly.
Is there, is it stillness, silence, openness? As we all meet, join in this celebration together of beingness, of self, of nature. What are we resonating as? What is that in each of us? Hear so much in Raymond's love. Is it love? You find and just notice. If you just notice the body, the nature that's here. Perfect. David's back with us. I've locked the room, so it will be the 9 of us today. The door is closed. Just as we meet in this beingness. Hey, next invitation is happens if we just let ourselves sink into this. Sink into whatever quality or qualities are here. This peace, this stillness, this emptiness, this love, this connectedness. As we sink in, does it feel like it permeates this body as you feel the body? Is the body of that? Are you of that? Or are you aware of it? Are you of it? This that is aware, is it of this? And as you notice commentators, narrators, parts, critics, pushers, can we just notice them, but kind of have a loving indifference to them as we're sinking into this beingness together? Can you feel it? Can you feel the beingness? Can it be felt? How is it known? Vibration of frequency and aliveness of bliss and openness, a spaciousness of flow. Can it be felt? And is your system able to have a loving indifference towards the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that arise? Can the attention be just on this as this beingness, love, this okayness, this peace? And again, how do you know it? Can you feel this? Is it permeating this body? Just one more moment of an invitation to sink into this, sink into the presence as the presence. Perhaps where the idea of sinking into it makes no sense anymore because I just am this. This is what I am. This is what is. And from here, let's notice going in the opposite direction as we rest here together as this, in this, as this, being this. very lightly to notice whatever the kind of loudest thought, feeling, or sensation is, but just to notice it from a distance. Whatever's loudest in your system. And does just noticing it, does something move in that as you notice a part, a thought, sensation? Does something move a little bit from the depths of being? Does it come up? Does it move a little bit towards that expression? Does the peace, the equanimity, the okayness, does it become less when you're aware of a part? And if that hasn't happened yet, I'd like to invite you to become just a little bit more aware of the part, just so that you can feel a little movement. You can find a little movement away from the depths of beingness. It kind of moves perhaps to the surface, to the foreground a little bit. What do you notice? What is that movement? What is that shift? Is it just a shift in attention? Or is it purely somatic? It was resting as the depths of the ocean. Then I start to feel the wave, a wave. What's the move? So we become aware of a part, aware of a thought. And then what if I ask you, what is it that that part wants? If I ask you that, does it move up a little further? Does it move away from beingness as it has a curiosity towards the part, as it has more attention on the part? And how do you see if you can let it move just a little bit, get a little closer to that part? What changes? How do you know that something changes? Does the body change? Is there a little bit of contraction as you get closer to the part? And for some of us, maybe this is just silliness. Nothing changes. That I am the beingness, and as beingness, it includes everything, all of the parts. But for most of us, something does change as we get closer to the parts, seemingly. And then now, if you can notice any contraction as we get more intimate with the part, is that a problem? Does something see it as a problem? Does a part say, oh, darn it, I liked it much better 2 minutes ago when I was just sinking in to self, when I was just being this? This isn't as good anymore. This isn't as fun. I prefer the other. So just to include what I advertised in the email. So the progressive path is the sense if we see something that would like to be changed, and by changing it, I'll come back to a better place. It's our progressive path. There's something to heal. There's something to change. There's something to welcome that will bring me back closer to home. And then from here, with the direct path, we just notice, oh, my attention is focused on this part, but I know where home is. I know that home is always here. Home is the sky. Beingness is here. Causeless okayness is here. Fulfillment is here. So how does that work in your system? How does a direct path from here, if it's like, okay, let's just go back home? Is it a stepping back? Is it a releasing? Is it a relaxing? Is it just what they call the path of the Yanni path, the path of inquiry, where we just like we see this, or is it a Byron Katie thing? Is it true? Is that true that that part is here and it's a problem? And then it just, as we see through, as we pierce through, we just return home. This is the direct path, just returning to self, that self is always here. We step back into the sky. What's your move? How does that work in your system? And then lastly, from here, there's beingness here, and we also notice the part, and maybe there's a little bit of tension in our system as we get close to the part or parts, maybe one that sees a problem, and maybe another part that says, gosh, this is going on a really long time, enough of this guided thing. As we notice our parts, or I'm feeling anxiousness in my body, the pathless path is just this knowing, this recognition that there's no problem here. Everything is included, just as it is. Everything is of this beauty and this innocence, these parts, and they're wanting something to change. What could be more beautiful than that? Seeing the preciousness of life. See if you can touch that. This is called the pathless path. They call this the joy of life. In India, they call it the dance of Leela. It's just recognizing like the innocent, whatever word works for you. Here are a few of them: innocence, beauty, perfection, radiant presence of what is, just as it is. And then as we come towards a closure in this little exploration, I think I'm going to invite us all, if you'd like, just to open your eyes and look at your square. Look at this reflection of you. And we'll start where we ended with the pathless path. As you look at this reflection of you, can you see just okayness, just the way it is? The beauty of you, the possibility that there's just innocence here. Nothing needs to change. I am. This is innocent beauty, radiance of what we are, just presence, life. What could be wrong with this? That's the pathless path as we look in the mirror, if we look at our screen. And then there's the direct path as we look at our image and we start to notice. I start noticing, gosh, what happened to my hair? Why are these wrinkles here in my neck? What's going on? Why am I 10 pounds heavier than I want to be? It's like the thoughts that are there. And then there's the direct path, the sense of we just step back. We just fall in and we come back home. That home is here. This is the direct path. We just kind of step back into the background, wherever you find self. How does that play as you notice your image and the thoughts that come up? And then we go to the progressive path. As I notice those thoughts, gosh, I've gained 10 pounds in the last year. The progressive path is a sense of, oh, no problem. I'm working out. We can kind of clear that. Or I can unburden that part that holds that sense of lack or wrongness. Because there's a sense that the sky is always behind here and it's just obscured by the parts, and that the parts can be healed, relieved, met, loved, whatever skillful means we use for that. And this is the progressive path. How did these three play in you? And lastly, there might be a spiritual achiever that comes up and says, no, that pathless path, that's the one I want. Or that direct path, that's the one I want. This progress, and we just notice that's just a part, that's just a voice, right? That says there's something's better than the other. It's just a part. And can all of these be welcomed and included in you? Can all of it be welcomed? All of it be included. As we just take a breath together, and then we can just like, whoa, that was a lot. Gosh, we didn't even get to say anything first. I didn't even get to say hello. I just popped on and we were doing all this. We could just shake all that off. Woo! That was rough. And it's like, here we are. And hmm, here we are. Just as you're noticing what's going on, what's here for you. It just let me just this question, how are you? How are you? What's here? And we notice, maybe notice the parts that are here. Like, God, that was exhausting. That was a lot. And it's like, all right, I'm trying to understand all of it, make sense of it. Notice the voices that are here. What voices do you hear with the how are you? That's the foreground. And what are they arising in? What's the background? What's the beingness that's here? And just as we all be intimate with our own systems right now, with how life is playing in us, I'm going to just take a minute to do my housekeeping as we're all inside with our own systems. That I'm a mediator. I'm not a psychotherapist, as you all know. So this isn't the IFS of psychotherapy. Rather, it's friends and colleagues exploring together. And if everyone's good with being responsible for their journeys today, if I could get a thumbs up, please. And then, Sarah, we can't see you. And then secondly, the I'm recording this as I always do, but oh, there's Sarah. And second, that only, but only my square is being recorded. However, the audio, only my image would ever be used. Yours would never would. However, the audio that you share could be. And so, if anybody has any trepidations about this, let me know, and I make you a co-host, and you click pause. Or if you find at the end you said anything you weren't comfortable with, just let me know and we delete it. And it's never necessary to do that. Everyone's good that this video might be shared, but only my image if I could get a thumbs up. And then just to add one last thing, that I'm playing the role of the facilitator, but there is no, it's like what is most welcomed is this makes no sense or this is wrong. And so really there is such freedom for whatever's there to be shared. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just listen to Jack sometimes. It was just like, that's nonsense. And so everything is welcomed here. And so welcome everybody. We've got the 9 of us together. Isn't this sweet that just the difference between now and 15 minutes ago, like here we all are, you have 8 of us being with you. Your system, your parts are being supported by this collective self, this love, this curiosity. So before we start with anything else, is there anybody having difficulty? Anybody like, whoa, I didn't like that. Anybody having difficulty? Anything bubbling? So who would like to go first to share like how that played in you, our little exploration? Or it could be like, I'm not interested in that. What I'm really interested in, I've got this huge part that's blocking everything, or just whatever's going on. Who would like to go first?
I could, if nobody else
Yay.
wants to jump. If somebody else wants to jump in right away, that's fine. But you know, um, I'm okay. I guess the analogy I'd like to use is I've been spending all my time in Rumi's guest house in my conscious mind, right? Where I see things come up and I see people go, right? And I got a strong invitation to go down to the basement of Rumi's guest house. And it's a basement for the criminally insane, basically, is what it is. I mean, that's one way to look at it. Uh, there's lots of parts down there that have been repressed. And they're repressed well enough so that I can sit up in Rumi's guest house and, sort of put my head back and, oh, this is so wonderful, right? So my systems do a really good job of repressing those, right? But they want to get out. And I believe I'm feeling them manifest as a pain in my back. I don't think there's, I mean, The pain is physiological, but I think it's caused by some suppressed stuff that's going on in Rumi's basement. So how those different paths, like it feels like a gradual path to be able to get down there and love those parts down there, right? I mean, I've been, ignoring them I mean, saying, "Oh no, that's not," sort of or working with them in very structured ways that they don't appreciate. And I could definitely see, um, I mean, there's definitely myself can witness them and be, not them. Okay, that's pretty easy to do, right? I can see that the whole system, if you will, is beautiful and that it's trying to, in a sense, like this pain is there to distract me from getting to the parts in the basement. It's like if I'm up in the Rumi's guest house part there, it's like I feel this pain, right? And I want
Yes.
to take care of the pain. I won't want to go down to the basement.
Well, let's
So
can I ask,
that's my analogy. That's what I feel going on.
it feels like we're just getting started. And so this Rumi's guest house for all of us, in the sense of a basement. It's like, does that work for you? The basement. We might have others. We might have different words for it. For this that Jack's describing, he calls it for the criminally insane. I don't know if I like that so much. I like
I
more
love them
just.
all. I love them all, but I don't want to let them out. They go out. They're doing all kinds of crazy things,
So yeah, these aspects of us, right, that we're kind of scared to let come up. And IFS, sometimes we label these as exiles, but they're just little kids. They're just generally like these vulnerable aspects of us, right, that might be carrying a lot of burden, a lot of wrongness, a lot of did something wrong, I'm should, shames. It's like, do we, for each of us, does the image work of the house, the Rumi's guest house just welcomes everything, but there's a basement. Like Byron Katie calls it the underworld, our underworld. And we all might have different images for this or different places. Notice if we can include that. Like Jack's system, it's like the self can witness them all. It can be aware of all of this. And it even can see the beauty of it in his system. But we're not going into the basement. We're not going into the basement because we don't want to do that. We're just not doing that. We're aware of the basement. See if we can all be aware of it, but keep your distance because we don't need to scare our system or shock it. And then my question for all of us and for Jack is, how do you feel towards the basement? How do you feel towards these criminally insane parts? How does your system feel towards it? Or or how do you feel towards, for Jack, it's a pain in the back. How do you feel towards this back pain? What do you find, Jack? What responds?
Yeah, it's more like whether I want to go or not doesn't really make any difference because I can't go there. It's subconscious, it's unconscious. So I can't even go there, is what it
But
feels like.
uh-huh. Yes. And how do you feel towards it when you think about the
Great
basement?
mystery, great mystery that
Mystery.
would love to be,
And do you have
solved, I guess.
and can you find the parts? Because for Jack's system, he can't go there. Something won't allow him to go there. And that's what I'm curious about in all of us. This is one of the brilliant questions in classic IFS, which is how do you feel towards this part or towards something? And the purpose of that question is to identify the parts that are in resistance to it. The parts that go, are you crazy? I don't even want to look in the basement. I'm not going down there. Like these are precious parts of us. And just if we can find, how does that express in your system?
I guess sort of one last thing is I think the trick, I'm looking for a trick, to be honest with you. I think I need to, who's ever protecting me Okay, there's a distraction of the pain, okay? But I feel like there's another layer of some kind of protector there that I need to get the permission of to be able to talk or get to that subconscious stuff. And I don't know how to
Right,
do that. And
right.
and I'm just hoping effortlessly it can be done.
So let's see, as we heard Jack said, I'm looking for a trick. Let's just notice in all of us maybe what voice that would be in us. One that's looking to, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could heal this? If we could like welcome all the parts up to the surface and heal them all? Like whoever would want that, right? That's like who would want that? A trick to be able to relieve the pain, the whatever this here, the back pain, this underworld, this basement, to let everybody come up into the guest house and play and be at the party. Just notice how that is in you, right? Maybe it's a healer part, maybe it's a spiritual achiever. Can we be aware of that? That's just a part, right? That's just a part. And we might and notice if you believe that, if there's a sense of being blended with that. Of course, that's true. Life would be better if the basement was no longer in the basement, if it was up in the house. So we're noticing that spiritual, that achiever, that pusher, that therapist. And then Jack says, there's some kind of protector here. There's some kind of protector that's keeping me from going there, or something that I need to meet. And that again goes to the question of how do you feel towards this underworld, towards this basement, towards these parts, towards the criminally insane, the parts that might create chaos in your life. See if you can find some of the parts that are resistant to that. And then, is it okay that those parts are there? Is it okay that there's a part here? Some people, sometimes they call it a gatekeeper that says, no way, no way are we going there. There's a reason these parts are exiled. There's a reason they're in the basement. Because look at me, I'm the professional guy. I got my stuff together. I do all this, but wow, if I let all those parts up here, gosh, what would my life be like? Can we see? And this is a lot. We're gonna kind of close this I think this dive pretty soon, this one. But can we see can we see the innocence of the parts of us that say no? Can we see the innocence of the parts of us that say no to this, that are keeping Jack from going into the basement in our system, the ones that say no? And Jack, I'm kind of curious to open this up and to see how this is playing for others. And before we do that, what are you finding? How's this going, Jack?
I guess my feeling is that those protectors are really, really sort of ancient habits. Before I was like, before I was born, kind of like inherit them just to be human kind of habits.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, they feel like really necessary to like even be able to function in the world kind of habits.
Yes.
So I'm not
Mhm.
sure
Got it.
how that works, but that's kind of the way they feel. But yeah, enough about me.
Great. Nice. See if you can relate to that. We call these like legacy burdens, or things that are passed down that are just a part of being human in time. And just in the midst of the depth of this, can we go back to the direct path? In the midst of, whoa, I've got all these exiles, I got this basement. Is it still possible to step back to the peace that's here, to shift back to the background, even in the midst of where we all are right now? Can you find self? Can you find beingness? And can you abide as that? Can you abide as an absence of lack, of fulfillment, and okayness? Even right now, how would your system shift to that? And then, secondly, let's just see if we can even glimpse the pathless path in the midst of this. In the midst of, we have this basement that's full of our parts, right? Of our exiles. Can we touch a place of just the innocence of it all? Like they're all innocent. Can we just see the beauty of them, even if they're a little distorted and they're having difficulty and they're wanting to break free and they hate life, whatever it is? Can we see the innocence of this? Can we see the possibility that there's not a problem with what is? Possibility that nothing needs to change. All right, how are we doing? What's coming up with where Jack just took facilitated us? Anybody have something coming? Yeah.
I was wondering if you could, because I was fascinated um, by you guiding us towards this pathless path experience coming from where we were with Jack a minute ago, and I was craving for some more of that. If you have anything else that could inspire us to reconnect with that from that place.
Yeah. Hmm. What's it like for all of us as we're aware of all this that's in our system? As we're aware of this basement, is it tumultuous? Is it exhausting? It's like, God, that's not really what I came for today. Is it a little scary? Is it a little scary? What's that like? Is we're just honestly with what's here? And as we notice our protectors that are like, don't get too close, don't get too close. First, as we notice our protectors when it comes to this basement, can we see the innocence of those protectors about how they're serving us? Ones there's a reason we kind of keep these parts in the basement. There's a reason we do that. Can we see the protectors that see that? Can we see how they're serving? Can we really see how when Dick Schwartz says there are no bad parts, that every part is doing its very best to serve us? Even the ones that had the keys to the basement, or the ones that have locked up these aspects of us. If we can find that, would it be possible to throw a party for our protectors? Could we really find the appreciation and love for how they've been serving us? And find that. We really can see from each of their perspectives, they're doing the very best they can to serve you. See if there's even love for them. Like, wow, they've worked so hard. Maybe they never have playtime. They never get to rest. Maybe they're even the ones that wake you up at night. And then there's this that they're protecting. And this gets harder, right? Because like in my system, there's a sense of unworthiness. There's shame that's here, not good enough. I did something wrong. These are what we call the burdens that are like that have attached to these young parts in our system that we've kind of pushed down. What about the innocence of that? Like, where does this shame come from? This shame, these stories that have been attached to. And that if we could just have a little space, see these precious aspects of they're just children. Most of them are really young. And they got this weight, like they're carrying these backpacks of something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm ugly. I'm this, I'm that, I'm awkward. almost like looking at pictures of you when you were a child. Maybe I had buck teeth. I had, gosh, I would. If you could see these pictures, but when you see these pictures of little you, do you not just feel love for them? You see the innocence of awkward you, of you that feels I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. Like the innocence, the beauty of that. If you were seeing pictures of you, and this is what brings us to the pathless path, when we can see that there's nothing intrinsically wrong here. There's nothing that needs to be changed. It's all just beautiful. It's all you. It's all me. It's all us. It's all life. Was that Antonio?
Thank you. That's really eye-opening because I would have reading your email earlier today, I would have thought of that as the progressive path. And I feel like I get a much clearer understanding of what you meant. At the same time, the parts in my basement, or being in a situation in the situation that Jack was describing, and the relationship with those parts, it makes me so curious as for the parts that are so scared of those parts. I mean, in order to lock them in the basement, I can sense they carry a lot of fear about these parts. And I have the sense that in my system, the way that expresses is these protectors do not want to be associated with those rejected parts, the parts in the basement. So, as you were saying, there's a lot of shame potentially. When considering that those parts might be part of the system.
Yeah.
Like those are parts and agendas or cultural burdens or legacy burdens, or that they have always preferred to see outside of our system, outside our house, but not in our house, not even in the basement.
So let me just ask again. Is it okay as we hear Antonio speak about these protectors in his system, and just see if he's speaking to all of us about all of our systems as he facilitates us here with these protectors that reject these parts that are in the basement. They reject them. They don't want to associate with them. Their job, perhaps for some of them, their job is just that, is to reject them, to keep them down, to protect us from them. Is it okay that they're doing that? Can we find from beingness, from self, this acceptance of these protectors just the way they are? And that includes, you might have another part that's like, are you crazy? This is the problem. These protectors doing this is a problem. We're never going to get, just like Jack said, he couldn't get down to the basement. These protectors are keeping us from getting down to the basement. You might have an achiever, a pusher, a healer that's saying that, but can we find okayness with it just the way it is? These precious protectors that are doing what they're doing and saying no, that are rejecting these parts of us. How's that play, Antonio?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Um, in- I'm really curious that they believe they actually believe it's their job. It's their only job, their main job, to keep those uh, rejected parts in the basement, to lock them down there. I feel like there's also like a grieving process that they need to go through. Like, because I feel like they know they are there. It's just that they want to deny it, like for their life. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. Like I sense, how important that feels to them. And at the same time, I think I can understand why those rejected parts have a reason to be also.
Let me just check in with everyone as we hear Antonio describe this protectors. Like for them, this is their job. And he's saying, I can see how important it is to them. How are you doing in your system with your protectors? Jack mentioned that might be the real key to his system, was even finding the protector that's saying no. Have you been able to, are you aware of some of the protectors in your system in regards to the parts that are in the basement? These parts that have been rejected that we hold down. And just as Antonio's demonstrating, are we able to see them? Are you able to see them? I sadly have another call. Oh, bye, Rossi. Be able to be aware of them. And can that be enough? Could that be enough? Just being aware of them, seeing them, welcoming them. Tony, any other kind of thoughts here before we see what else is bubbling for others with this? This is just, I
I
love where
think that's
you're taking
exactly
us.
I think that's exactly what they need. Like the only thing that I can do right now is just offer my understanding. Like I can, it obviously is so painful for them, and they have so many burdens attached to that, and so yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
How are we doing with this? What else is Bud? This is different than most of our groups where Jack just kind of took us into this really deep place. How are we doing? How are we doing? What's coming up?
So, Sid, I wouldn't mind jumping in just for a second or 10. And I actually want to go back to one of the first things you said at the beginning of this meeting, which was about joy. And so what I experienced when you said that word, and you were using a lot of words with ending in ness. So the word that came to me was togetherness. And actually, that was very useful for me, even in the light of what Jack and Antonio were talking about. And there is a time for that deep excavation. But actually, what comes up for me is, and I may be quoting some famous verse that people quote at weddings on, you know, Corinthians 13, if anybody knows what that is, what describes love. And it says, love always protects. And it then made me think about, you know, and again, this could be mythology or anything. I'm not saying this is, so just, I'm treating it like that, you know, the whole Adam and Eve thing, you know, it says they were naked and they felt ashamed. And then it said the Lord gave them coverings. You know, the coverings that they gave us. So sometimes in my experience, two things. One is I've learned not to go looking for pain. And I say that because in my own experience, when the time's right, I'll say the Lord or higher self, I don't see any separateness between, you know, anything actually. There is no separateness. Everything's appearing in the same space, right? We could just say that. But that not looking for pain, that doesn't mean I don't get taken down to the basement. It means I don't go looking, because sometimes it depends what it is. I might not, just like you've touched on a little bit, said, I might not be ready for that. Do you know? So there's a bit of wisdom in love always protecting you, and sometimes covering something over until an appointed time, when it's the right time. You've got a lot of love there. You've got a lot of the sense of self, the non-separated self, the non-compartmentalized self. And when that's big enough, then nothing's a problem to look at in that sense. So that's what comes up for me, that there is a divine element to the protective coverings that we have, certainly I've had, over some of my own traumatic experiences, which I have had many of as a child and as a teenager and various other things. So I'm speaking from direct experience of, you know, she mentioned shame and things like that, you know, so it's interesting how the divine, as we call sometimes the great physician, how precise that gets worked out. And yeah, it's a wee bit like eye surgery for me. It's very, very delicate. When the Lord touches something like that, it's almost in a way for me where I'm ready for it, but it's so gentle and so loving and kind that it kind of dissolves in that essence. It's like you said, I don't need to fix it, but the touching into it, which is just, for me, is just energy. And it's been helpful in my own journey at times where my mind is completely silent. And it's just energy I'm feeling into. It's not an image of this or a thought of that. It's just energy. And I call it licking the battery, right? Because you know that you lick a battery and it gives you that little shock. It's a bit like that, where consciously, with some wisdom, that might be the time to say, right now we need to lick the battery a little bit, and that energy needs felt, and then it kind of moves, it flows. And the more we do that, the more empty space is appearing. And then it's just like the daily energy of just being in this body, in this world. I'll park it there. There's a lot in that, I think.
A lot in that, I think. How did that resonate with each of us? Did you What was that like when Raymond says that there's a divine element in the protective covering? We hear Antonio speak about these protectors that have this role that just hold everything down. Divine element, and as Raymond says, love protects you. There's this higher self. Love protects you. And that could these protectors be like angels? You know, they're just the divine, this divine element, this love protecting us. And Raymond says something, it's like, well, when the time is right, I don't go into deep excavation. I don't put on my Indiana Jones hat. Like, okay, let's go down to the cave. Let's go down to the basement. That it's like there's this wisdom of love. What else? How's this playing? I mean, we got Jack, we got Antonio, we got Raymond, we got all of that we're kind of aware of here. How's this bubbling for us? What else is coming? Who wants to go next? Vendor. Oops, you're muted.
Yes.
I'd love to hear
Hello,
first,
everyone.
maybe, hey, like what was this like hearing with Jack and Antonio and Raymond? What was that like hearing that for you?
Um, there was some stuff coming up for me, but then there was some part of me saying, these are very intellectual people. I've been in the victim mentality for the last few days or a couple days, and here these guys done their work. And I wanted to kind of, I wanted to move around and distract myself from this. What was coming up for me. And the last couple of days has been, a family member he left the group, and that brought up the feeling of abandonment. And but I did not want to play that victim mentality or say anything. Then I looked the other group, she was part of the other group too, and she was not there either. And I went to the place, what did I do wrong? Some stuff out of the basement was coming up again, most of my life, I've been judged and criticized by certain people, but there's some people really adored me and say, oh, you're doing such a good job. As long as I was doing a good job, achieving things, I was okay. But if I had to express myself, I wasn't okay. So underneath, I was kind of, some sadness was coming up for me. I don't know what to call these parts, protectors or, this victim mentality.
Let's just pause here because you've shared a whole lot already with this dynamic of this. Just this line, as long as I was achieving things, I was okay. That's one I think we can all relate to as the protector, right? The protector finds okayness through achieving things. And it also could be even a distractor. Vinder started off by, I distract myself from this. Like, when we hear these lines, I just distracting myself from this. What are we distracting ourselves from? Is it some of this that's in the basement? Vinder speaks of a sadness that comes, she used the word coming up, the sadness, like in the sense of that I did something wrong, right? That's a really painful one to be with. I did it wrong. It's really harsh. A lot of like shame in that because it's easy to go to, there's something wrong with me. I did something wrong, and we have these. I can relate to absolutely everything Vinder said in my own system, absolutely everything. And then we have these protectors that are like, I can distract myself from this. Distracting is a way, a way of the protector. And then I can achieve, and then still have a sense of, well, there's abandonment, touching something in the basement. And just to notice the relation between the basement, the abandonment, the I did something wrong, the sadness, and the protectors, the achieving, the distracting, perhaps the connecting. Perhaps we find that even in a group, there's a sense of connecting, and that connectingness, the connectedness, this welcoming, this acceptance, we find peace. And it's one of the gifts of being together, right? There's this self become more accessible. But then we go back by ourselves, we find abandonment, aloneness, loneliness, sadness. I did something wrong. The relationship between the two. And just because we don't want to miss the gift of Vinder. Vinder, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Just for all of us, how is your system responding to what she's sharing? Is there just kind of awe and wow and fascination and just like being with and welcoming? Is there a sense of being with her from self, from this beingness? Or is there a sense of parts that come up and say, oh, we need to do something about that? The sense of abandonment, maybe a healer part comes, or it's an understanding part that's making sense of what she's describing. Where are we meeting her? Are we meeting her from parts? Are we meeting her from self? Are we welcoming her system? Is it okay that what she's describing is here? Can we find okayness with it? Even with the sadness, with the abandonment, with the things, I'm not okay. Can those be accepted in Vinder as we hear her describe these? And this goes back to what Antonio asked about finding the pathless path. It's like finding the beauty in what's arising, and we're kind of playing that game with each other's systems. Like, could we find, is Vinder's system is there any problem with what she's describing? Can we touch that Raymond's seeing in her, just the beauty of what is? This is how we get to know this pathless path better. We get to know the perfection of what's here in our own system. How are you doing, Vinder?
I'm pretty feeling tired. I just feel like this is never ending work, when I'm gonna get rid of this victim mentality. Yesterday wasn't that bad though. I was able to, normally I would I want to hear that person say, what did I do wrong? Can you please explain it to me? I want to write a text message, but I didn't do that. So there was some bit of an okayness with it too.
Yes. So, but
But
what
there's
about
sadness.
that? What about what you just shared? It's this tired, this is never ending. When am I going to get rid of this victim mentality? When is it going to change? When am I going to get relief? When is this going to change? When is it going to be easier? Right? We all know this. This is, in my system, it's my spiritual achiever. It's just got to come on, or this healer part. We're desperate for it to change, and maybe there's a little flavor, but it could be even a critic in there. It's like kind of this isn't going well. And so my question for you, Vinder, for all of us, as we hear this part, when's this ever going to change? When am I going to get relief? Or when am I going to just be able to rest as self? Like, we all have our versions of it. Where do you hear that voice for all of us? Where do you hear that voice? The one that's kind of wanting things to change, to be better, to be different, that's wanting relief, and wanting, when am I finally going to get this? Right? It's just a part. It's just a part. And like the irony is, right, that what it's looking for is already here. Where do you hear that part that wants something to be different, that wants to be, hey, I want to be able to go into the basement and welcome them all home, or I want this sense of something wrong with me. When's that going to stop being so darn loud? When am I going to stop feeling like a victim? Can we hear that as a part? And Vendor, where do you hear that voice in you? Like, when is this gonna, when am I gonna get rid of this victim mentality? Where do you hear that?
Um, like it's, see, I don't know. I'm kind of confused. Is it, and I'm questioning, where is it coming from myself too? Is it,
Or just as a part? Like, where do you hear the voice? Like, oh, this that you were describing to us, I'm tired. This is never ending. When am I going to get rid of this victim? Like, when we hear that voice, is it in your head? Is it like, or is it a sensation? Is it a contraction in your heart? Where do we find this? Is a big deal. This for me is one of the gifts of IFS. This is why I adopted IFS, because it helps us to be able to be aware of it instead of as it. We don't have to be this contraction, this sadness, this frustration. We can be aware of it. Like, can you find it?
waivers, it was in my head. Then I was feeling in my solar plexus.
Yeah.
That sensation.
So with that, the
And there's
sensation, just being aware, you're aware, just to be aware of the sensation. It's a big deal. I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. So there's awareness of it. And Vinder, just out of a time, I'm kind of wanting to, we're going to need, because we haven't even heard from Susan, David, and Sarah today. But any kind of final thoughts that you'd like to share? Yes.
No, I'm in an okay place. I'm okay. Like, I'm working on this for the last couple days, and rather than kind of wanting to fix it, I've been kind of sitting with it.
Nice.
So I think that's the progress, because normally I would want to write a text and find out, what did I do wrong? And, that was my immediate reaction. But then I
Perfect. So
sat with it.
just that. We can all hear that, right? The sense of, wow, I was just sitting with it. And can we all find that edge in our own system of parts that want to resolve, want to fix, want to do. And then there's just where Jack started off today, Rumi's guest house, which is just the sense of welcoming, being with. Thank you, Vendor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just notice that we receiving the gifts of Vendor and including everything what she shared, welcoming it. Okay, Susan, David, Sarah, who wants to go next?
Great.
David.
Yeah, so first I want to say that everything that everybody has said thus far has resonated with me. It feels like it would be if the language, the words, the vocabulary can be different, but it's all been helpful and supports why we come together as a group to work on things as a group, even though we have our own individual perspectives. And to that point, so my individual perspectives, let me start with a little bit more feel. It seems like in recent years, I can't remember exactly when it started, when I'm in a public space and I see a child, particularly a child with a parent, I have a quite strong feeling of, oh, aren't they cute? Aren't they beautiful? It's just something about, I don't know, their innocence, or whatever they're doing, and it's so more, within much more recent times, last couple of days, something flashed about my own, looking at my own parts with that same appreciation that I would have for the childlike quality of children. And it was kind of seeing the historical roots of some of my parts that are, been there for a long time, but looking at them in the same way that I would look at kids that I see in the supermarket, like I did yesterday. I just go, oh, aren't they sweet? Aren't they cute? And so that made the perception of my own parts more, open and fluid, but still separate. So that's kind of more progressive path. There's still something separate. So it became more of an either or situation than a both and situation. There was being or there was seeing the parts, but not seeing the parts from being or knowing myself as being and seeing the parts. So but noticing the back and forth was like really kind of fun and enjoyable. And so there was a learning there too. So my parts that have been exiled to the basement, to use a metaphor, Jack's metaphor, are they have a timeless, ageless, here now presence, but they often come up sort of accompanied by narratives about the past. Some of the time feeling, sometimes specific stories of things that happened, and it opens up regret, guilt, shame to some degree. Bye, Raymond. So this is like yeah. And the manifestation of the protector against being sort of fully taken by or absorbed by these regrets. Oh, if I could only do that over, whatever, that kind of thing. They take the form of projection into the future. Worrying, planning, rehearsing, and the feeling in the body when that is seen from being, which I consider God's grace coming into play, because I'm not doing it, I'm just seeing it. Yeah, that happens. But when it doesn't happen, what often comes to the fore is, let's move. I want to get out of here. I want to go. I want to leave this spot and get away from whatever this is and go do, because I got a lot of stuff to do. I've been planning, rehearsing, anticipating. I got a big to-do list. Let's go. And so there's a shift from to don't just sit there, do something. But what's been left is don't just do something, sit there. And that's both of them are okay, right? Anyway, that's some of my individual flavors or articulations of what I feel we've all been talking about.
Oh. How about when you describe awareness of some of these parts in the basement? Perhaps there's this, first off, this innocence that David's describing as he's seeing children. He sees this. It's just the cute, the innocence, and then it's like, and then he starts to see that in his parts. Wow, this is like, wow, my parts, they're of this innocence too. And so we can touch that, right? We all know this. We all know this flavor of seeing the innocence in children in the world, and then finding that in our own system. And I'm not sure I followed this completely, David. Then there was a sense of the basement and becoming, we're aware of, we touch in and we become aware of some parts. Perhaps they're seeing some of this. Yeah, seeing some of this, he called it timeless, ageless presence in the here now, in these parts in the basement. And I'm not sure if that includes the innocence or if it's a different window, this timeless, ageless here now. Okay, so there's a sense of it being met by being, which he describes as God's grace as well. It's just like there's nothing I'm doing here. There's just beingness that's being aware of these parts. But then what becomes so interesting is the other response, the response of the parts that we heard in David, the sense of, well, then there's the narrative that comes. Then there's a narrative. Then there's a guilt. There's shame. There's regret that comes. When we meet one of our parts in the basement, and at first there's just, Jack was describing, everything is welcomed. Everything is seen as beautiful from one perspective, right? And maybe this is the God's grace. This is the beingness. And then we get parts. And these protectors that we were describing, we got parts that respond, react. How does they react in your system? Is it a sense of regret? Gosh, life could have been so different if I hadn't had this contraction. Is it a guilt, that gosh, guilty that I have these parts and there were things have happened in my life, or that these are still here? Shame. Like how do we respond? And my last question with this, and we're going to go back to see how this is all playing in David, and for all of us, is, could that be okay that our system responds? It's that brilliant IFS question. Like, how do you feel towards these parts? How does your system feel towards these parts? And we notice all the parts that come up. Is that okay? As Raymond was describing, it's all love. It's all love. Even the regret, the wrongness, all of it. For him, the protectors are all love, and there's all a reason they're there. How's this playing, David? And how did I do? I'm not sure if I got.
Yeah,
I
you
might have
got
missed
it. You
some of
got it. The one thing that I felt very graced in recognizing that I hadn't quite seen as clearly before, if at all, was how the form of the protectors who struggle with the acceptance of the beauty and innocence of the parts generating regret is that it catalyzes this. I must move forward. I must, it puts me out of the present and start rehearsing, planning, thinking, doing, wanting to move. And yeah, I do have things to do, so that's okay. I mean, I allow and recognize the planner, rehearser, organizer, to-do list creator. But to see when that arises from as a shield to acknowledging the parts that are being protected and the protectors is like, gosh, I'm glad I saw that.
Yeah. Thank you. So how about this? This is core to IFS as well, what David's pointing to. And it's when we talk about parts as being burdened parts or being unburdened parts. Like we can have completely unburdened parts. The planner, the rehearser, the organizer, to-do list, the creator. Those can all just be an expression of life and flow, right? But then we also often have those that carry a little backpack, they carry some burdens, or they can be used to, as David said, to shield us, and it's all in grace, right? As Raymond was saying, it could all be in love. It's like, okay, let's go. I've got some things to do. We need to plan. We need to do these things, but those can also be a way of moving away from feeling the parts that are in the basement. And I want to suggest that those are our superheroes that do that. There's nothing wrong with that, because I got that going on so much in my system with the parts that I don't want to just be feeling this shame, and it's not ready yet to feel that. And so I have parts when that comes up, it's like, okay, it's time to go work on a video, or time to go play with my friends, or get some work done. It's like, can they be okay, this that David's pointing to? When they are doing it as a way of shielding, can that be okay? Can that be not only okay, can that be perfect? Can we see the innocence in that, the parts doing that? And can we even see the perfection of that, just the way it is, just what Raymond was speaking to. It's just the way it's happening, and there's a reason, there's grace, it's love. And I want to save time for Susan and Sarah here, but any kind of final thoughts with that, David? You unpacked so much in what you shared.
Just the last thing, which feels really valuable to me, is that I noticed that the seeing of all of these organized, unorganized things going on was a kind of a sinking back into being, seeing it from being. It's not something that I did. It just, the perspective arose, and there was a feeling of, oh, okay, that's life. That's being alive.
About that. Thank you. And how's that for all of us? Where are we aware from this awareness? As we're aware of what David's sharing, as we're aware of all of us here. Is that a part, or is this just this awareness, this beingness? Ooh, okay, we gotta just take a little breath, a little shake. Like, whoa, because we've got 15 minutes left, and we haven't even heard from we got Susan and Sarah here, and this is just that was a lot that we just dove in with David, and and again, we're not going anywhere. We have a spiritual achiever. It's like, wow, there's a lot I need to learn from this to get from this to get. No, we're just playing. It's like it's after school. We're all playing in the backyard together, and our parents are going to call us in for dinner soon. So what is Susan or Sarah? Who wants to go next with sharing what's here for you? Yeah, Susan! Yay!
Hey, hiya. Hi everyone. I'll keep it as brief as I can, but because there's a lot going on. I've just been on a kind of retreat, so I've come in very quiet, and now I've got a lot. There's been a lot. So the pathless path and my basement of little parts that are in fear. Where I went with that was, but those fearful parts hurt others. Right? My burden parts tend to hurt others. So is the pathless path, is it all okay? Is that okay? Kind of wasn't okay. There's parts coming up saying it's not okay because burden parts tend to harm others. And I've got an example that came up for me yesterday that I'm sitting with. So I've got some regret about hurting my nephews through a fearful parts in me, or kind of projecting my fear onto them, really. When they were young and more defenseless, really. And then I thought, but then something came, and I don't know what's going on here, so I'm just sharing. The thing that came was, but what if my burden parts was grit for their oyster making? You know, I don't know, do I? So maybe it is all perfect. Maybe it's all bloody perfect, and that doesn't mean to say that it's not when the time's right. Coming back to what Raymond said, which I thought was lovely about divine timing. When the time's right, those fearful parts may be unburdened, but that will be perfect. That will be divine timing, just as it was not divine timing for them to act out, or it was divine timing for them to act out when they acted out. I don't know. Anyway, so I came in here very peaceful, having been on a retreat, and now my mind's blowing, and my analytical parts and parts that want to understand are, oh boy.
How about that? How about that, Susan? This analytical part, this understanding part, because we've got, I mean, look at the group that we have here and what's been shared, right? It makes sense. Like, can I really follow what Antonio, all that Antonio was sharing, and it's David and Jack and Vendor was sharing. I mean, there's so much there, and where do you hear this analytical part, this understanding part? Where is it? Where is it? Is it back of your head? Where do you hear these voices that's trying to make sense of?
The parts take me up into my head. I was quite in my body, actually.
Yeah.
And they kind of take me, yeah, so they're sort of in, actually I've got a feeling they're here, actually, oddly. I don't know what that is, but they're here.
Uh-huh.
They're going, the frown, it's the frown.
See? So how about that? can we all see that? Maybe feel it. Sometimes we can just feel into it in Susan's system. The ones that are just kind of to her right, the frowning, the understanding, the analyzing. It's like, and maybe one that's kind of, maybe there's one that's even critical. It's like, wait a minute, you just came back from retreat. You were in this really peaceful, calm place. And now you're all like, oh, there's this analyzer part. And just, can we hear her parts? And like, where do we find them in her system? And Susan, so you've got this analyzer part. And what are the voices are you noticing? What other parts are here?
There's yeah, I got a bit going on in the body. I've got something in my heart area right now. Just a bit of tension here.
We're aware of that. We're aware of these thoughts about burden parts might hurt others, so maybe burden parts aren't okay, and maybe I have regret, maybe I hurt my nephews, but maybe I didn't. Because as we hear those voices, like just to notice the parts where we're hearing them from. A sense of, and then there's a sense of, wait, maybe everything's okay with divine timing. Maybe there's a clarity or a wise part, or it's here. And that's kind of making sense of this pathless path, this progressive path. And it's just like, wow, how do I hold all of that? Wow, I need to have this little map here, one that's maybe thinking in terms of that. And the tension in the heart. Can all of that be here? Can all of it be welcome? Just for all of us to, like, can we welcome all of this that's going on in Susan? All of these voices, all of these parts. And is it possible that the calmness could still be here as we're aware of these parts and these voices? Like, notice that this, where we're aware from, there still be calmness here in the background, or even to do that little, the direct path thing and just kind of step back. We're just going to step back to the peace that's here, the calmness that's here, the okay-ness, or what was found in the retreat, that space. I'm gonna step back to it. Maybe it's a little sinking in for us. Like, how does this happen for all of us? As we're aware of Susan's parts, Susan's voices, or our own, and our own. At the same time, can we step back, do the little direct path thing and step back to the beingness, the fulfillment, the okay-ness, the peace, the calmness. And from here, sometimes I like this word loving indifference, where we're aware of all of these parts, but we're not really engaged with them. We're just aware of them. And for some of us, we use different metaphors for that, like the galaxy or the hot tub and planets, or dancing parts, actors on a stage. How you doing, Susan?
Yeah, that's helpful. And at one point during today, it did sort of it just was a sort of a knowing, not an analytical part that said all the paths are true and they're not mutually exclusive. I can't make sense of that. Again, my analytical part can't make sense of that, but there's a knowing. So it's all true. It can all be here and it's all true. And that kind of brings, well, that came with the settling really again.
Yeah.
That it's all, they're not mutually exclusive somehow. It's all true. And then my analytical part goes a little quiet.
And can there be a calmness, a settling, even if the analytical part is like, oh my God, I really want to follow everything David said. I really want to get that. There's so much to, can that be doing that? And can there still be, perhaps there's a little bit of this knowing that everything's included, and then.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's some parts that kind of really take hold or something. And a part that kind of feels an expectation as part of the group. If, you know, I think I spoke about this before, where there's this sense of what it is to be a participant in this group, as opposed to letting what happens happen. So
Yeah. How about that? This one, so there's a part that's like, hey, I'm part of this group, but maybe it's a connector part, maybe it's an enjoyer, maybe it's an etiquette part, and we're aware of that. Oh, wait a minute, Sarah. We haven't even. Will you share something? Give us something. Give us something, because you were our grand finale. We were saving everything up for you. We were all building up towards Sarah.
Thank you. Well, today it's been a lot. It's been really great, but I do have to go. So yeah, well, the highlights.
Will you go first next time, Sarah? Will you go first next time?
Well, we'll see.
Highlights, please give us highlights. Yes.
I just really love the part about David's recognizing the innocence of his parts. I could see that too, and I got really emotional. And I realized, like, oh, the more I connect with my parts, the more I see the innocence of them, and I started to even like see pictures from childhood and feel like, oh, look at that cute baby, or and before I was like, when these parts were not healed, I would like look at pictures from childhood and just remember bad stuff, or feel bad about something, or feel shame about, oh my god, look at how big my forehead was, or look at that dress, I can't believe my mom put me in that, or things like that. But now when I see old pictures, I feel like, oh my god, look at that cute baby, just the way I just see another child walking down the street, and I feel the same feelings. And I realized, like, oh wow, I'm healing in that place. Like, I just see the innocence of me, just like seeing it in any other child. And I just really love that. So yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, David. And I really have to go. Thank you so much.
Bye, Sarah.
Lots of love.
Oh. We have 5 minutes left. Susan, you've just beautiful what you've been sharing. You want a couple more minutes, Susan, and then we'll kind of see what's bubbling for everybody as we close. Anything else you'd like to share about this?
No, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Susan. How about that place Susan went at the end? There's just a sense of knowing, different than the analyzer, sense of knowing. And she said, all parts are true. That. All right, we got 5 minutes left. What's here?
Yeah, what came up for me on the idea of all parts are true was more, I'll separate the idea of true from the idea of truthful. So I think all parts are being truthful when they're expressing, whatever they're expressing. Some of it could be opinion, right? And opinions are not necessarily true in a objective, like, outside world sense. So there's a part of me that really eases when I think of as being truthful versus, quote, being true. There's less of a paradox there for me in a way. Oh, how can these two things be true when they're opposites? They're both being truthful from their perspective. And that just really has helped me in the past. And I kind of unpacked it maybe differently than you said it, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Susan.
I didn't say all parts were true. I said all, yeah. No, it's a very easy mistake in the sense I said all paths. I was thinking about your progressive, direct. I meant all of those are true.
All paths are true.
All paths, yeah, and they are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, paths. Okay.
That was
okay. That makes a lot of that. I wouldn't even thought about that. Oh yeah. Thank you.
And that they are not mutually exclusive. The bit that got me with the knowing was they're not mutually exclusive somehow. But that was just in a moment of knowing. It's not an understanding.
Gorgeous. Thank you. David. Oops, muted.
Wanted to give voice to a part that resonated particularly while Susan was speaking, of the complexity and the insights, and oh, that's a treasured insight. The part that comes up and says, oh, I got to remember that. I just have to lock down and remember that. And there's a recognition. It's like, okay, you can try to remember stuff, but the self that is giving the instruction to the self that's trying to remember, that's not where it's going to come from. The remembering will occur if it occurs, and it's that which remembers on that level it's a different way of a different set of words for what we've otherwise called, being, or self with a capital S. So thank you all for that, Susan in particular.
Thank you, Dave. We all know that, right? The part that's like, I gotta remember that. That was a good one. I gotta write that down. Awesome.
Yeah,
2 minutes. What else?
I
Sorry,
have
Jack.
this real strong feeling of this idea. It seemed like a good idea at the time, or it felt like the appropriate emotion at the time, whatever it was, but it was suppressed for whatever reason. It wasn't acceptable, or geez, like, that can't be me. I can't hate my whatever it is. That's I couldn't possibly. So that tension between, it came up, so it must be right, and the tension of, oh, and it's right to suppress it too. Like, those two being okay is a tension that I'm kind of working with, I guess, that you guys are helping me with. So thank you all for that.
Nice one. Final word, Antonio?
Lots from my intellectual parts, but we're good. We're good. We enjoyed this time together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Final word, Vendor.
No, I'm in a good place. I feel like I'm in my body.
In my body. Thank you. Wow. Isn't it cool? Again, an hour and a half of this where we went together, how we co-created, and how each of us kind of took us through different windows. And so just a big thank you to all of us.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon.